Hello, everybody, and welcome to Mind's Eye Visual Guitar Methods Start Here series video number 4, Emotional Mode Order or Mood Order. Because modes are moods, and here is the quickest explanation I can do on a video about the emotional order of modes. So let's start. What we have here, the very first thing is the scale order of modes that we went over in the last video, so be sure to watch that. I've got it listed as SCA here for scale, so maybe it's helpful to write that down. So if you're new, you can hammer this into your head. It's Ionian, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, and also watch our last video for the mode codes, so you understand that I is for Ionian, D, and this is how I'll talk about modes for probably most of the videos you'll see, just using a letter in a box. So get used to that. Now, you can see that the scale order is not the same as the emotional order, and that's where some of this modal information has been kind of a gray area to you, and what's what and what sounds what. You want to know the emotional order of modes, and they have a lighter sound and a darker sound. Lighter, you can think of like music that might be like uplifting or angelic or happy birthday, and stuff that's a little more serious, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel perhaps. And then going on to music that's dark and menacing, or would be in like a scarier part of a movie, uh, maybe more of a suspenseful part of a movie, and that kind of emotional content. You have basically 7 modes in a major scale that will create these emotions. We will get into exactly the mechanics of how that works in a later video, but you just want to know the order first of all. So we have from lighter to darker, we have Lydian above Ionian. See, that's where people get confused, because Ionian is the first mode in the major scale, and it's the major mode, but there's one that's lighter. It's Lydian. Then there's Ionian. So you can think of Lydian as like very uplifting, some Joe Satriani kind of songs, a lot of songs that have to deal with subject matter of angels, or something, aliens from above, or something uplifting, something a little bit dreamy. Lydian is probably the sound, especially when they want to sound a little bit more dreamier, or something a little peculiar from regular old happy birthday, um, happy songs that are just more in a normal vein. Maybe perhaps artists like Tom Petty would have created a lot of songs with Ionian, but I'm sure he's got plenty of Mixolydian and Dorian and in songs to spice it up. But happy songs, generally happy songs, Ionian. So we go from Lydian as the brightest, Ionian is to standard, happy, Mixolydian twisted up a little bit, and then we get to the sad modes. There's kind of a split right here, which we'll see in the rest of this chart here. So there's a split right here into minor modes. These are the major modes, and these are the 3 minor modes. Kind of use a uppercase M there and a lowercase if you can on your notes. So then Dorian is still on the lighter side of a sad scale. So there's kind of like light at the end of the tunnel. And then perhaps there's a standard sad scale, Aeolian. And if that sounds familiar, hey, Mark, isn't Aeolian the natural minor scale? Good thinking there, and that'll come up in a second. Phrygian scale, which is, a lot of people will say, has a Latin sound or maybe an Egyptian sound. It's used in a lot of heavier metal, until you really twist it out by adding in notes that are outside the major scale, where it becomes a harmonic minor. There's like Phrygian dominant and scales like that, but not the scope of what we're talking about today. But once you understand these modes in the major scale, those modal ideas and concepts suddenly become understandable as well. But that's down the road. So anyways, Dorian lighter, Aeolian standard minor, in Phrygian a little darker minor. So if you notice that there's kind of a balance here between these 3 and these 3, you are correct. So before we finalize that, let's get the odd man out here. Locrian, just like we said in the last video, Locrian's the odd man out. It is, in my emotional assignment, I've given it kind of two ideas. I haven't really experimented creating music with it, as a lot of composers know it's not very ready to create really coherent sounding music. Now, it's a coherent scale, but it leaves you hanging. So that's why I call it the enigma scale or the question mark scale. If you have some subject matter that leaves, you want to leave the, you never want to resolve, that's your scale. Resolve means getting to a final point, a resting point, a solid ground, back to a home base in music. And if your music's going home, you're probably not in Locrian. So if it has the feeling of returning to a stable area, stable tonality, stable scale structure. So another way to, and what is stable? Ionian, and Ionian is next to Locrian, because as you can see here on the scale order, when you're done with Locrian, you get right back into the Ionian. So for example, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, right? Do is back to the one again, and ti is that final stretch that wants to have you very fulfillingly drop back into do. If, for example, you learn a scale like the whole tone scale, it doesn't it doesn't have this pattern that doesn't create that tension that drops you back to the one. A whole tone scale just kind of keeps on going forever and never really resolves. So that's a little quick as I can introduction into tension and release and resolve, but it that has a lot to do with this Locrian scale. So anyways, Locrian is the enigma, and it also will drop you back if you want to build some tension before you go back into your Ionian scale. That's a great scale to do that with, but that's up for you way down the road when you want to start experimenting with modes, and I'll give you in later lessons the quickest, easiest way to musically experiment with these emotional ideas in the next video. But this one, let's just go over the order. So you'll notice that we grouped them into three, and you can even, I visualized it like this, and it was always stuck in my mind from there on. You basically have three happy scales and three sad scales, three major scales and three minor scales to deal with Locrian being the odd man out. And you can see here it's kind of like you could just kind of have the same set of eyebrows for each one, and you'll notice something here. Let's notice that the we've got kind of a, when the eyebrows are up, it's a little lighter, just a kind of a really happy, and this is just kind of a general happy, and this is a little bit of a twisted happy, kind of like Lydian is. It's got a little bit of an edge to it. It's happy, but there's something about it. This is happy, but there's something really light and buoyant about it, and that's the raised fourth. But we'll get into that that concept in another video. What a raised fourth is, right? So anyways, you have an Ionian here in the middle. Keep note of that. Down here, it's really the same thing. You have Aeolian as your standard sad scale. Now, Dorian has the sound, it's built off the 2 of the scale, and when it's built off the 2, it's got a little bit of a lighter sound to it. Phrygian being built off the 3, okay, but notice they're kind of not, just like all of the other ones, they're not in the scale order, they're not where they are emotionally. But irregardless, the Phrygian scale has a kind of a twisted, that darker sound. We already went over that. So the point I guess I'm trying to make here is that in the middle, you'll notice there's a balance. The middle is always the balance of any scale. Hey, what do you know? A scale. There's balance to a scale, right? Interesting, huh? Well, in the middle, there's Ionian and Aeolian. So what do you know? When you hear the natural minor scale, now you know why it's called the natural minor scale. And the other minor scales are on the other side of Aeolian, a little lighter, a little darker. So you could theoretically call Ionian the natural major mode. No one ever refers to that, and that's to keep everyone else behind. I'm sure it's not exactly for that, but it serves a great purpose to keep the confused and keep everyone from knowing music theory very simply. So, Ionian, the major scale, is a balanced scale. Why is Ionian 1 the major? Because it's balanced in between the two modes here. And this answers a different question that's what I'll wrap up the video with. And that is this. Everyone always asks, because they're confused, like, why is the major scale, the one with all the whole notes, start on C? Why doesn't the one with all the whole notes start on A? A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Why does it got to be C, D, E, F, G, A, B? Right? So, once again, that probably not purposefully, but it helps to keep you, once you understand that, into that music theory field. And all the people who don't want to study, who don't want to make anything easy, who are afraid of music theory, keeps them in the distance. And you move forward in your musical endeavors. So anyways, that's kind of an advantage then. Now, why though? Why would there be any reason that A was used for the natural minor and not the major? And when I researched it, the answer I found was that in the beginning, way back, when they were beginning to assign music into scales and just kind of get everything built up, music was not really not commonly based on happy music. It was more based on standard serious music. So basically, Aeolian was the first common scale. And being that it was the most common scale for music at the time, that's where the A, now it just so happens that Aeolian has the letter A, so don't let that confuse you. But it just so happens that, for example, on a piano keyboard, that, or just basically that the A, B, C, D, E, F, G scale with no sharps or flats is a Aeolian. It's a minor scale. And that since the A is there, A, B, C. C is the Ionian scale in the key where there's no sharps or flats. So basically, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, starting from C. All the notes of the alphabet starting from C. That came later, so now we have our most of our music in modern times focuses on the major scale. That's the first one you learn. So there you have it. My short as I could make it, emotional order of modes. Hope this helps you. And next we have some more notes to do, and then we can eventually get into the how to create very easily the sounds of these modes on your guitar and all across the fretboard. So stay tuned and we'll move on from there.